Yesterday, Lord Hermer and David Lammy joined forces to smear Nigel Farage for those 50-year-old racism claims. Well, today, the so-called fake news media, as it's been called by Azir Yousaf, has accused Reform of a backroom pact with the Conservatives. Will the establishment stop at nothing to keep Nigel Farage out of number 10? And this also comes as a group of celebrities, headed up by Sir Lenny Henry, have formed the so-called Together Alliance to keep out what they claim is the far right. The Daily Mirror adding Reform UK into that mix today, lumping them together with Tommy Robinson and all the ghouls of the far right. They claim to stand for hope, not racism. Is this, though, just a joined-up campaign and the beginning of the dirtiest general election campaign we will ever see this side of the Atlantic? That's today's conversation. I'm joined in the studio by GB News' political editor, Chris Hope, GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and delighted to have in the studio the former Home Secretary, Conservative MP, Suella Braverman. Welcome to you all. Chris, let's start with you. Yesterday, guilty before proven innocent, Lord Hermer, the Attorney-General, Sir Keir Starmer's number one legal attack dog, joining up, coincidentally, on the same morning with David Lammy, saying you must apologise for these offensive things, which Nigel Farage has denied even saying. Here we go again today. Briefs to the FT. The FT, the newspaper that probably despises Nigel Farage the most, the Remainers Bible. Briefing. There's going to be a backroom deal between the Conservatives and Reform. Nigel Farage called it ludicrous, totally and utterly denied it, as has lots of senior Conservatives, including Kemi Badenoch. And now we're seeing Sir Lenny Henry, almost the funniest thing he's done since the 1980s, forming this group to try and campaign against the far right, which the Mirror saying includes Reform UK. Things are going to get really, really dirty. And I put it to you, this is going to be the dirtiest election in British history. I
think so, and it is just starting. There's no question that Nigel Farage thinks the establishment will do all it can to stop him getting in. He is trying to torpedo it, blow it up from within. He wants to, bring in unelected people to run government departments, not MPs. He's got no plans yet for the House of Lords. What's his plan there? The establishment is worried about what he might do. He is 10 points ahead of the two parties. I think Tories up 2 points, Labour on 21, Reform nearly 10 points ahead. So they are ahead. This new idea here against, they call it the far right, the Fontaine's DC, Paloma Faith, Lenny Henry and others, together against the far right. They don't say who they're talking about in their press release. It's reported they mean Reform UK. And what the left will try and do is yoke in Reform UK with the far right. Of course, Nigel Farage has nothing to do with the far right, as he would describe it, is with Tommy Robinson. He would say that's different to where he is.
Well, but Keir Starmer has lumped them in with the far right since the Southport.
And he rode back from that after saying that earlier this year, saying that it was the far right's concern about the rape gangs and so forth. He doesn't quite go that hard, but he thinks he's not fit for office. But yeah, this is happening. I think the FT leak overnight. That is not where Nigel Farage is. Whenever he talks to you, even privately about this, he just can't stand the Tory party. After that betrayal as he sees in 2019, he stood down two-thirds of his candidates, of course, almost bequeathing that landslide to Boris Johnson and never got any thanks for it. For me, the deal happens post-election. It's similar to, I think Nigel Nelson was saying, to 2010, when there's no talk of any deal until there has to be. When you get post-election, if no party's got enough for a majority, if Reform can do one with the Tories to keep Labour out for 5 years, I think that's when it happens, but not before.
Theresa May, the DUP. I mean, it does happen in politics. But for now, everybody is saying this is another. But
this is done, Martin, to hurt Nigel Farage. That briefing in the FT, I think, was to hurt Nigel Farage, to make it look like, well, it's all the same thing. OK, Suella Braverman, let's bring you in at this point. You must get asked about Reform questions so often, I'm not going to ask you. But let's talk about what many people do perceive to be a huge establishment attack. Not only is it Lenny Henry and Paul Weller, but it's the TUC, the Trade Union Congress, the NEU, that's Britain's biggest teaching union, are all coming together with Lord Hermer yesterday, with David Lammy. You've been inside government, inside the civil service, and how they seem to be just up against the forces of the Conservative Party when you were Home Secretary. Do you think we're in for just the mother of all dirty fights?
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private internet access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private internet access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
Well, I think this is a precursor of what is to come, and the lefty establishment in all those organisations that you mention, the celebrity class, the elites, who don't have to deal with the real-world impacts of illegal migrants staying in their town centres or having to wait 12 hours in A&E. They don't have to deal with a lot of the world that many of us have to deal with. They are running scared. They're running scared because they see the polls. They see that the majority of British people are fed up with high tax, high migration, and a contempt that the Prime Minister and the ruling classes seem to have for the majority of patriotic Brits. And they are voting with their feet. And judging by the polls, they're voting reform. And that's why they're soaring ahead. And the left-wing establishment is absolutely petrified of this. This would be a disaster for them. We have seen this before. It's not the first time. We saw it with Brexit.
Yeah.
The establishment close ranks and do everything to try and stop the people from voting with their conscience and their heart and their minds. They didn't win. We've seen it with Trump in America. The establishment pile on to try and stop him winning. It didn't work. I very much hope that patriots see this for what it is and they keep voting with their feet in the way that is a way for strong borders, law and order, patriotism and a restoration of common sense in our economy.
Do you think we are seeing the emergence of this kind of kitchen sink strategy? As we saw with Donald Trump, it was everything.
Yeah.
Because the entire machine of the establishment was geared against him. It didn't work. Do you think it would be defanged in Britain? Do people see this for what it is now?
I think they do. You can see that from the recent attempts to smear Nigel Farage and others as racists. I think we've seen it so many times before. You know, what the left do, when they don't agree with you, they call you a racist.
They did it to you, of course.
Having been called a Nazi and a racist more times than I can remember, simply for wanting to stop the votes. I've really seen the effect of it and been on the receiving end of it. I feel quite strongly about it. It's such a puerile, unsophisticated character of debate, and it's wrong. It's also wrong. But they do that when they have no other arguments to use. Suella,
it's the first time we've seen you since the budget. It's the first time we've seen you since the OBR chief has quit. You've written a stinging piece in the Telegraph today about the OBR. You think it's time we got the chop. Tell us why.
Yeah, I think I reached this view a few years ago when I was Home Secretary, and I really saw the misplaced orthodoxy that the OBR works on and its disproportionate influence or power that it has in government. I wanted to cut unprecedented levels of net migration, legal migration. That's the visas, not the boats. And yet, one of the biggest obstacles I came up against was the OBR. The OBR would keep saying, no, we can't do that, Suella, because that's going to affect GDP, because more immigrants into the country is good for the economy. That's what the OBR believed. And the OBR loomed very largely over the Prime Minister, over the Chancellor, over my cabinet colleagues, and they all were influenced, and they all objected to cuts in legal migration because of that very flawed orthodoxy that the OBR parrots.
It's also incredibly expensive. Cost the taxpayer almost £6 million a year.
Yeah, it's very expensive, and I do question what value it has, given that it's got a decade of flawed projections consistently, and even on its own admission, it overestimates productivity, it underestimates public sector borrowing, underestimates inflation, underestimates tax receipts, and gives an overly optimistic view of the economy, which lulls chancellors into a false sense of security. So its modelling is wrong. And this is not just about pedantry. They make errors to the tune of tens of billions of pounds, which can affect whole budgets and whole departmental budgets. This is really serious, flawed economic modelling. And combined with their unaccountable status and the disproportionate level of influence they wield in government, I think it's time for it to go.
Strong words. Chris Hope.
Well, just a quick one, Suella Braverman, on this talk around the Tory party and reform. Do you agree with me that the time for that is post-election? That before going into election, you won't have the two parties coming together?
I do. I think it's premature, really. I know it's a fascination for lots of commentators and journalists and MPs, but the reality is that nothing really can have any meaning until we know how the MP numbers stand, and that only happens after a general election. And also, both party leaders have categorically ruled it out, which is a kind of prerequisite for any deal to happen.
But everyone rules it out at this stage in the game. I mean, we have to think of what happened in 2010, and certainly by election time, when a coalition looked more likely, David Cameron was putting a lot of preparation into the whole thing, which is why he got the coalition with Nick Clegg and Labour didn't. But by that time, he decided which ministers should be, Liberal Democrat ministers should be embedded in his government. And he did prepare for it, but it was only the lead up to the election it happened.
Yeah. Well, there's some discussion about that, because if you remember, after the 2010 general election, there was also talk of Gordon Brown forming a coalition with the Lib Dems. So it was all up in the air.
But Nick Clegg didn't like Gordon Brown as much as he liked David Cameron.
Exactly. That was why. But it could have easily been a Brown-Clegg government, actually, and it really was
Gordon
a matter
would have needed another 11 MPs from a different party, at least with David Cameron, he had the numbers then to add Lib Dems to it.
So it all depends on your results at the general election.
A Brown-Clegg coalition. A lot of people might think, what a bullet we dodged with that one. On a serious point, Nigel, I want to get your take on this constant talk, mainly from me, of the entire establishment. It just seems to be every single day now there's a fresh adversary for Nigel Farage. This is going to get very, very ugly.
Well, it is, but I mean, politics is a dirty business. I mean, Suella just mentioned the kind of abuse that you had in your day. Yes. Rachel Reeves at the moment is getting an awful lot of abuse. So I don't think this is actually unusual. You're absolutely right. The establishment does not want a Nigel Farage government, but that's the political game. That's what people go into politics for. They have a thick skin to deal with that.
OK, thank you very much, Nigel Nelson, Chris O, and especially Suella Braverman. Always a pleasure to have your company here in Westminster. Thank you.